Hi, everyone. I'm Ron Close. I'm the Vice President of Marketing at Shapr3D. Welcome to the third edition of our vlog. We have a very special guest with us here today. He's the inventor of NURBS, which stands for Non-Uniform Rational B-Splines. Go look it up. Also an executive consultant at SimData, Mr. Ken Versprille.
Hi, Ron. Pleasure to be here speaking with you.
And maybe we could just kick off the conversation with a little bit of background, for the layperson, maybe describe what NURBS is and why is it important.
Let me tell you a little bit about the history of how it all started. And then I can talk a little bit about when people ask me who are non-technical, what is a NURB? I try to give them an explanation that they can relate to.
Oh, cool. Great.
It all started as I was graduating from undergraduate in the math degree at University of New Hampshire. I had come from upstate New York to go to school I wanted a New England town, small town atmosphere. So I ended up at the University of New Hampshire, which I've never regretted. They had a tremendous program there and still do, where the math professor walked in and announced, okay, today we're going to prove that a proof can be proven. And the very next sound you heard in that room was a thud where my head hit the desk and I went, no. Enough theory. I wanted to be able to use the math that I've been studying for all these years.
And at that time, was there a BS in computer science?
There were no undergraduate programs in computer science at all that I could ever find. And got into a number of schools, but only one offered me a full year first scholarship, fully paid, with his living stipend.
Wow.
Plus the promise that in year 2 and on, if I did graduate student teaching, that they would pay for the tuition and give me another living stipend. The fun story there is they assign you a graduate student advisor. You have nothing to say. They just give you a name. And I met with him within the first week I was there. And his name turned out to be Stephen Coons. Unbeknownst to me, one of the grandfathers of computer graphics. And I ended up taking his course.
I know the name, and there's something called the Coons patch.
Coons patch.
Yeah.
One of the things he did was he devised a way of defining a surface patch mathematically based upon the edges and the corners. By the third class, I looked at myself and said, okay, I have found what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I love this stuff. As a graduate student at Syracuse, they provided you an office. And most of these offices were in these older homes around the university on the periphery. And I had an office there, but it was a regular sized desk, a 5-foot wide desk. That didn't work out too well trying to work on the math of NURBS. So I used to go down in the building next to us, an instructional building. They had a cafeteria in the basement. And I would go really to the far cavernous corner and grab one of those 8-foot long tables and put 2 of them together. Okay, so don't get turned down by one 8-foot table. I had to put 2 of them together and Scotch tape paper across the entire span of the table as I worked on these very, very long equations. And every once in a while, a friend would show up and come running over and say, hi, Ken. And then they would see what I was doing and they quickly said, oh, well, we have to go. Nobody wanted to look at that. Now, the second part of that question is, what is a NURB? Try to explain that to somebody. The way I usually do it is say, okay, imagine a spaceship as it moves through the planetary system is not going to crash into those planets, but is going to go near them and leave a contrail. So that is the curve of a NURB curve as it's drawn gravity-wise towards those planets and then moves on. Now, a non-uniform rational B-spline is the weight, the size of all those planets are different. So there's some big ones and there's some small ones. And as you would expect, The larger they are, the bigger weight they have, the closer the ship is drawn towards that planet. So it's sort of sucked in. And that's really what a NURB is. Now think of 1,000 spaceships all lined up traveling the same way. That would be like a surface as they all moved.
So when it first was adopted, who were the pioneers in adopting this?
The big one that really put it in place and put it on a spotlight on it was Boeing. Rich Riesenfeld, discoverer of B-splines, had gone on after he graduated and got his doctorate to the University of Utah and was a professor there. And he was teaching classes in computer-aided design and surface modeling. And one of his students, he obviously showed them NURBS. One of his students went on to work for Boeing in their programming organization at the time, because Boeing had their own internal systems. And Boeing was struggling with, over the years, they had a lot of different individuals create applications that they were using, but they were all based on different mathematics. And in order to move a design through all those applications, they had to do all this conversion. Wow. And at best, all they could do was approximate between the applications. They couldn't do it exactly. Well, suddenly shows up NURBS, a lot of this stuff exactly. And it was a database format thing for them, not so much a design tool as a way of moving data through these applications. And they started insisting that their suppliers and their software suppliers implement NURBS and provide NURBS databases to them.
This is really fascinating, kind of going back through the history of NURBS. I'm kind of blown away as you think about, how often is it that you can create something that has such an impact on an industry. I mean, virtually everything created has some NURB in it, or every CAD model. That's pretty amazing. So I'm really excited about this industry. Back then it was a lot of fun. New things were coming along. Any predictions for the next 5 or 10 years of CAD that we can hold you to?
Oh boy, that one I would have to give some thought to. I think you're going to see a much healthier interaction between electrical and mechanical.
Okay.
Today it's sort of like force fitting it together. I think you're going to see it, assuming the way product development is continued on with more and more electrical in mechanical products. You're going to see a little bit more healthy. You're going to see a better integration of software, because downloadable type software on products is also, it's a big business, and you're going to see that in design software take a bigger role, I think, equal to what geometry does today. That's about as far as I would say. I look forward to being surprised.
No, that's great. We're all looking forward to see what happens in the coming years, and I'm pretty sure NURBS is going to be a part of it no matter what.
We'll see.
And thanks again for joining us on this vlog. It's a pleasure to have you with us, and we hope to speak with you soon.
Welcome. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Use the loft and fillet tool to easily create non-uniform bodies. First, check to see if you can transform, modify, or scale your existing sketch. Create additional sketches to get more control over your final body and generate a more sophisticated shape. For a bulletproof result, create sketches with the same amount of curves. Thanks for tuning in to our Shapr3D Tip of the Month. If you're looking for more tips and tricks like this, check out our library of tutorials and webinar recordings, and make sure to subscribe to our channel for upcoming content.